Welcome to a special broadcast of how independent agents are winning big in the rental market. Today we've got Darren Nix, founder of Steadily Insurance Company, joining us to talk about how independent agents can tap into the growing landlord insurance market. Darren, welcome. Let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to start Steadily.
Well, I actually started my career as a software developer way back in the end of the dot-com boom, and then pretty quickly made my way into insurance on the P&C side for auto and homeowners, and spent a number of years there serving some of the five largest carriers, learning the ropes, and mostly from the lens of how we were going to catch up to carriers like Geico and Progressive that were just growing like a weed relative to the incumbents. And so all of that led over the years to about 8 years ago, I bought my first rental property in Chicago. When I went to get coverage for that property, it was like rolling back the clock 20, 25 years. Many of the innovations that I had gotten used to seeing on the auto insurance side in terms of speed and competitive pricing just had not happened in landlord insurance. That piqued my interest. And over the next 2 years, that evolved into what would become Steadily.
Darren, thank you. You mentioned that Steadily is growing like a weed, but we know that every startup has some bumps along the way. What has some of yours been?
Some of the early challenges were that in the first 2 years, we were primarily focused on folks that came directly to steadily.com to buy a policy. And what we intended to do all along was to perfect that customer journey and get it to the place where we felt ready to open it up to independent agents. And that ended up taking 3.5 years, not 2, because this is a complicated space. One of the things that makes landlord insurance more complicated is that when you own a rental property, you're not living in it. And so if you ask a homeowner a question like, could you take a picture of the electrical panel, or when was your water heater last replaced? They often know the answer because they're in the property every day. But for a property investor, in many cases, they've never even seen it with their own eyes in the last year. It's out of state. They have a property manager. And so there's an additional layer of difficulty that goes all the way through underwriting and rating and pricing and serving those policyholders that makes it a complicated sector to get right.
Well, you mentioned some of the challenges involved in landlord insurance, but you also mentioned earlier that landlord insurance piqued your interest. What are some of the opportunities that balance out the challenges that you're seeing in that space?
Well, it's been fairly straightforward to build the product roadmap for Steadily because I'm insured by Steadily. At my peak, I had 7 rental properties and they were all insured with Steadily. And so I was frequently having the types of challenges that our customers and our agents have, which is I switch lenders. I need to get an endorsement on this policy to update the mortgagee. I need to add another named insured. I want to requote, raise my limits, lower my limits. And my expectation as a policyholder is that those things are going to be 5-minute long exercises. Hopefully I can do them myself. And if not, I expect it to be quick and painless for my agent to do it. And so at every juncture, we just get to ask ourselves, how close does the reality of what we're delivering as a company match up to what we want to experience as a customer? And so those opportunities, to your question, were to make it a magical, easy, fast experience, the one that we would want to use. And I know that that sounds like hyperbole, but one of the advantages of being a software developer is that we have a pretty good instinct for what's doable, what's achievable. And we've been able to cut through a lot of the technical difficulties that have made landlord insurance slow and painful in other domains.
I'm all for magical, easy experiences, so that's very cool. So besides the overall intent to provide great experiences, can you break down a little bit what makes, what you're doing to make agents' lives easier and help them grow in terms of helping them succeed in the space?
It comes down to speed, simplicity, and focus. So landlord insurance, or a DP3 dwelling policy, it's literally all we do. So there is no property type or condition that we haven't seen before. And so when somebody comes to us and says, hey, I'm doing a fix and flip, and then I plan to go and list it on Furnish Finder on a 6-month term, our answer isn't going to be, well, we're going to need to have the primary on the policy, otherwise we can't do it. Our answer is going to be, sure, we've done 100 of those in the last week. Here's what you need. We'll get you done in 10 minutes. And so from the agent's perspective, the rates are competitive. The speed is insanely quick. And if something does need to go to one of our underwriters for something complicated, the SLA for our underwriting team is 15 minutes. And it's very often quicker than that. And so that's one of the things that's easy to say but hard to do. Yet when we look at the feedback that we get from our appointed agents, that's the number one thing that they cite is just how freaking fast we are.
That's great. Just to expand on the question about what you're doing to make agents' lives easier, are there any major trends in the real estate world that agents should pay attention to and that will help make their lives easier as well as a result?
One of the trends is midterm rentals. So I think we're all very familiar with the short-term rental market at this point with Airbnb, but midterm rentals are really growing. And that's for folks like traveling nurses, the digital nomads that really enjoyed the COVID experience and made it stick. And that brings a lot of different insurance needs. And then you have the mom and pop investors that are expanding their portfolios and want someone who understands things like, how is my policy going to react if I have a vacancy that goes over 30 days? If I bring in an Airbnb and they bring a pet with them and a bunch of damage is done to the property, am I covered by my traditional dwelling policy? Do I need something additional? And so all of those funky things that happen in landlord properties that don't happen in homeowners insurance, those are the trends that we're hearing more and more about over the last couple of years.
So Darren, if I'm an agent and I'm listening and I would want to break into this space, can you give me some knowledge on where one would start to do that?
One of the things that we found surprising is that there are a lot of rental property owners out there that inherited a rental and may never have told you about it as the agent that they own this property. And so step one is to work with the folks that you already insure. So that stat that I'm citing actually came from a TurboTenant survey, and they said that over 41% of landlords were currently only using their homeowners insurance for coverage. And so that presents an opportunity for folks to be able to tap into their existing networks of customers and expand into a bespoke insurance policy for their rental property that's going to give them the right coverage at the right price versus just a typical endorsement onto a homeowner's policy. The second thing that they can do is we've been very active about creating content that's very easy for our agents to share and customize for their audience. And that helps them trend on social, on Instagram, on Facebook, etc., so that they can get some additional business, both on the landlord insurance side as well as for their other lines. And then lastly, it's a niche expertise that many of our top producing agents, frankly, didn't know a ton about when they first started. And then once they developed the muscle of how to use Steadily quickly and effectively, they saw that become a much more significant part of their business as one landlord referred another to them as their agent because they were able to serve them so well and so quickly.
Fantastic. Darren, any final thoughts for agents out there who are interested?
I think I'd recap it by saying this is a potential new revenue stream for the agent out there. Landlord insurance is often ignored. It's often lumped under homeowners insurance, but it's a growing category. And when you think about it as a separate line of business that can be done better, the pricing advantages that can be gained and the speed and efficiency when you work with a specialist like us can be transformative. So I'd request that anybody come to steadily.com/agents and ask for an appointment.
That is fantastic. Darren, thank you so much. That's a wrap on this special broadcast of how independent agents are winning big in the rental market. And again, big thanks to Darren Nix for sharing his expertise on how agents can win in the landlord insurance space. To find out more about how Steadily Insurance Company is helping agents with faster tools and better support, head over to steadily.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time with more tips from the world of insurance.